would be interesting if people did see cemeteries as more than spooky places or creepy places, but as a place that we can go and honor and remember these people and their stories.
Welcome to Behind the Live podcast, the show that takes you backstage to uncover the real stories and strategies that power your favorite creators, entrepreneurs, and leaders. No filters, just honest, real talk. Now, let's get into it.
Why don't you tell us a little about yourself and what got you started into exploring cemeteries?
Okay, so my name is Katrina. I am with Western New York Cemeteries. I've been doing the account, since April of 2023. I started the account because I was off work and I thought it would be a good way to, for one, get out of the house, get back, into the cemeteries, get fresh air, and also to keep my brain working by doing the investigation on who these people were and finding out the information. Um, I've always been interested in cemeteries. My mom was I guess we can say, the keeper of the graves. She was the one that every Christmas, every Memorial Day, she was the one out there visiting her grandparents, great grandparents, planting the flowers. So I remember doing that from as long as I can remember, actually. And remember being about 10, 11, and taking two of my cousins along, and they were completely freaked out because I think it was like the first time they had ever been in a cemetery. And I just thought that was so weird. Like, no, this is a cool place. It's a quiet place. And yeah, like we were talking about, everybody has a story. So every one of those headstones represents at least one story. Sometimes there could be two, three people all represented on a family headstone, but it's it's so interesting. The one example that I use about that, about having a story, is Aretha Franklin used to spend her summers here in Buffalo. It's where her mother lived after her parents divorced. So we don't know if the headstone that we are walking past is a gentleman who, say, for example, owned the grocery store and, you
Uh,
know, tossed in the extra loaf of bread for her mom, because she was short that week,
mhm.
and feeding Aretha Franklin lunch and, like that kind of stuff. Just tiny little stories. We don't know what it is. So I love trying to figure that out.
So how do you usually like find inspiration for that kind of content? Is there like a particular place you go? Is there a particular headstone you look for? Is there a name you're looking for? How do you pick and choose whose voices to speak for?
Well, yeah, that's really interesting because, like, I can imagine just going to a cemetery and like seeing a person's name. Like, how do you find all this information out?
Right. So the one place that I do kind of start is with the more notable, I guess we can say, notable burials. They are marked on Find a Grave as famous people, even though they might not necessarily be famous, famous. It might just be a state senator or, state assemblyman or something. But you can always find good stories that way. I look at dates, try to match up dates in a lot of cases. If it's somebody's birthday, the anniversary of their death, or if it was something that they were really tied to. Um, for example, for a live that I did um, last year when we had the first Black female on the presidential ticket on election day, I went to the grave of the first Black female who actually ran for president, Shirley Chisholm.
Hmm,
She's buried here in Buffalo. She lived here for a while after she retired from Congress. And so I spent the afternoon kind of talking about her and wandering around and sharing other graves in the area.
interesting. So you do go live in these cemeteries direct, or is that just like Is that something you do regularly or something that just happened to kind of once?
I used to go live more regularly.
Mhm.
Um, it'll probably be more towards spring again that I'm gonna
Very
go.
true. Yeah.
Um, Buffalo winters are not pleasant.
Yeah, I believe that.
Um, yeah, so I do go live. I would normally try to start out or end with somebody notable or a headstone that's amazing. There's one here that in today's dollars, it would cost about $3.5 million to build this large, it's like a gazebo with four full-size, life-size marble statues inside. It's
Mm.
very cool. So I'll try to start there or end there and just kind of wander around and, point out headstones I come across, answer questions for people in the live,
Mhm.
um, talk about the symbolism that you can find on headstones, because there's a lot of different meanings behind everything from how hands are positioned to flowers being held to uh, an anchor to all sorts of different things that
Right,
you don't
right.
really think about. So, yeah, I'll talk about that on the lives.
So, like, which way do you like to connect your audience better? Do you find posting the videos of really intense information or going live? How do you like to interact? Do you like the live content that you produce, being able to have that instantaneous feedback, or more so the videos that you produce and the information you give that way, and kind of wait for the messages and the comments to come in? Which one do you really prefer?
They both have pluses and minuses to them. With the content, you can take your time when I do my videos, you can take your time and really focus on the information, make sure it's in depth and correct and all of that. And then you do get slower feedback.
Hmm.
But with the lives, a lot of times you're just going off the cuff and
See
trying
what
to
happens.
remember. Yeah, pretty
Right,
much.
right,
Like,
right.
okay, so around this date, this person did this.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
When you do the lives and you also your content and stuff, how do you deal with like negativity? Do you have any forms of that with your comments or with people, the negative comments, the negative feedback? How do you deal with it?
Thankfully, I don't get too much
Okay.
on my videos. People are excited and happy to learn about it. Um, I think the most, I guess you would call them negative or not positive. I guess you can say not positive
Not
ones,
possible.
have been on my video about September 11th.
Okay.
There have been a lot of political comments left on that, which aren't always the greatest things because I'm trying to keep politics out of this and tell the
Hmm.
story about the people,
Hmm.
not, I'm telling the story about the people behind the headstones, not
Right.
necessarily what their politics were, what caused September 11th or that. I was
Right.
talking about
Right.
the victims. And so
Hmm.
that one was kind of hard to deal with. And, I would leave those messages like, we're not discussing politics, we're discussing the people. But during lives, I just try to educate the people as best I can for when getting some negative feedback, but mostly I just get positive
Okay.
or neutral, I guess.
People deal with negative comments, deal with that negativity in different manners, in different ways. Some people just ignore, some people block people, some people don't give it any favor, but then also some people take it way too much to heart nowadays too. Um,
Right.
but that's one thing too is with your lives and with um your content that you create, do you have like a strategy in intermixing those two about growing your audience base?
No, not really. I do find that the lives tend to draw more new followers.
Hmm.
At the end of the live, the number of people who followed during the live is much higher than a video that I
Right.
put out.
Okay.
Um, However, I'm always surprised by which video draws new followers. It's,
Mm, okay.
um, is it's very hit or miss. It's
Hmm.
very interesting. I could spend hours doing a biography on somebody and get one new follower.
Right.
However, I put out a video saying, um, we're going to be doing the theme of September for September, a
Hmm.
cemetery month and stuff.
Hmm.
And I think I got like 14 new followers from
Oh
just
wow.
the introduction saying, I'm going to be doing this in the future.
Right.
Um, so I guess they wanted to find out what was happening, in the
Exactly.
future
That
and
was my
stuff.
point. Right.
But it was very, very interesting. I always am surprised by what videos take off and
Hmm.
and when. Um, I did a video in the fall of 2023 about Pop Warner.
Hmm.
I can always figure out when Pop Warner Football League registration is because the numbers of views spike for about 2 weeks.
Right.
It will go, it'll be like 2,000 viewers in 2 weeks. And it just, I don't know why. It just is, he just keeps drawing people.
Have you had any special requests from your viewer base to do a certain political person, a certain famous person, a certain anything, a certain name?
I have. They're not necessarily in the area that I work in, so I'd have to travel. Like I get a lot for California or, Florida,
Well,
like
it's a good way
they
to take a
think
trip. It's a good way to get out there.
right,
Sometimes, it's a business trip then.
very true. But yeah, so I have had a few. Lucille Ball is in the area, Rick James
Hmm.
is in the area. So people, especially when I'm on my live at Forest Lawn, they all seem to know he's there. They're like, let's go see Rick James. And
Right. What's one thing people get wrong about like being a creator on TikTok and other platforms? You have a very specific niche that you run with. You know what I mean? And that is awesome. You have bravery to go out there, forge new grounds, and be informative, entertaining, you know, and there's a lot of work that goes in behind what you do. And that's where I kind of wanted to touch base with a little bit. What is when you talk to people or you have these live interactions with people, like what are the things that people just get wrong about you and all the stuff that you do? Do they have any kind of like false pretenses or any kind of false ideas about your content that you create?
when I will say that I do content about cemeteries,
Hmm.
the number one question is always about the paranormal,
Right.
like mentioned earlier. It's what kind of equipment I use to speak with spirits. How often does this happen? How often do I get touched? How often? So people tend to go in a completely different route when they think of cemeteries. They definitely think of spooky, Halloween, paranormal-ish. And so I have to explain that no, I do the stories and the history and biographies. And that seems to be a little confusing for them because it's not something that people have thought about before, all these stories in cemeteries. And so it's nice to be able to say that to people and have them realize, oh, yeah, there are stories behind these stones. There are people behind the headstones.
And
And
that's one thing you said, kind of, which I really like in our pre-interview, is you said about how you give, the voices to the voiceless, which I kind of coined into that.
mhm,
But also, it's, you spoke about how many times people die. You want to
right.
elaborate with that one again?
Yeah. So I've heard that people will die twice. The first time is when they physically die. The second time is the last time their name is spoken. So either by
Uh-huh.
family or friends or history books, it's interesting to think about all these people out there right now who are nameless and faceless and storyless. And that's what I would love to do, is to bring these stories to life, bring these people back to life, um, make sure that they are not forgotten.
And that's so admirable. It really is. Because again, um, it is giving those voices to the voiceless stones that sit there. It is telling the stories of the people, the things they do, the lives they've changed, the amazing events that they've done that we may not hear about, like Rick James, the
Right.
famous people, the musicians, which we all hear about. I remember seeing one of your posts talking about the last surviving woman that went over the falls.
No, the first woman,
Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, first, right?
the
Yeah, I'm
first
sorry.
person to go over the falls and survive,
Right,
Annie
right.
Edson Taylor, right. Not many people know her or her story, and
Yeah, I did.
she was
So,
she was amazing. She was 63 years old. It was on her 63rd birthday when she went over the falls. She came up with this idea hoping to get rich and famous, change her life, and she went over the falls, she survived, she designed her own barrel.
oh wow.
There was a harness inside that was strapped her in, it was cushioned in there to help prevent the shaking. She designed all of that.
Hmm.
After she went over the falls for about the first year, she was pretty famous, went on speaking tours, took the barrel with her. After that, her manager, ran off with the barrel and a younger woman pretending to be her.
Wow.
Totally left Annie. So she ended up, at one point, she read tarot cards up at the brink of the falls trying to earn money. She
Uh,
would do like sell photographs, all that kind of stuff. She did end up dying penniless, and the trustees of the cemetery donated the plot that she is
wow.
buried in because she died penniless.
That's
And
crazy.
I know so many people don't know her story, but
Right.
we're
But
going to
that's what
keep
you're
her
doing.
alive.
Yeah, but that's what you're doing, and that's kind of seem your drive and purpose is to give that voice. Because again, I've learned something new this evening, something very interesting. I'm actually rewrite. I'm gonna review that post again. That way, I get it correct next time. I promise.
Okay,
So,
no
but now
problem.
it is very interesting because people go, they drive by the cemeteries on their way to work, their way to Starbucks, and they see all the stones, and they don't think about it. They don't
Right,
think about the lives in all of those cemeteries, the lives that were affected by those lives also, and all the little things. And
right.
that's so admirable that again, you dedicate your time, you dedicate your energy and your money to give those names just carved in granite. You give them a reality, you give them a life again, you give them a history, you give them a being in a sense, a voice,
Mhm.
and you're using this wonderful technology so other may learn from it, you
Right.
know? And that's the most interesting part about it all, and that's the most admirable part. Have you ever like reached out to families or family ever reached out to you about the long lost cousin they want you to track down or help them find or anything like that?
No, I have had people on posts claim that they are relatives
Mhm.
of people, but I'm not really sure if they are or not. Like
Right,
when
right, right.
four people appear and say, "That's my great uncle," it's like,
Right. Well, it could be, you
okay,
never know. So,
you never know.
yeah, yeah.
But no, I would love for people to reach out and say, "Hey, I have this family member. I would love if you would tell their story because they did this, this, and this."
Very cool.
Actually, now that we're talking about it, I have had one person.
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
So yeah, um, yes, I have had one person reach out. They are interested in me talking about their best friend who
Mhm,
passed away in a car accident when they were 19, 20-ish.
mhm.
There was underage drinking involved and high-speed driving, and they want me to kinda do talk about this woman, her life, her story, what she could have been because she was so young in college, as well as have it kinda be a PSA against
Mhm.
underage drinking and reckless driving.
It's very
Um,
productive. You take that horrible situation, and any life being snuffed out is a horrible situation, but to
right,
turn it at least into a learning lesson and a positive note. So that
right.
way it's not all based in vain. Maybe again, it can change another person's decision, change another person's attitude,
Mhm.
shall we say. Is there any like one favorite story, any favorite headstone specifically that just is always in your mind?
There
Well, I
is.
have a few.
The one that really sticks with me is Bayard Wilkeson,
Hmm.
19-year-old from here in Buffalo, from a very prominent family. His grandfather was mayor for a
Hmm.
while of Buffalo. His father was a reporter. His aunt, his mother's sister, was Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who was a very prominent um, member of the suffragist movement. She was good friends with Susan B. Anthony.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, and this kid ended up dying in Gettysburg at the age of 19.
Mm.
Um, I don't know why I feel very drawn to that headstone. I
Hmm.
go and visit him often, talk to him. I know that probably
Hmm.
sounds weird, um, but I'm very drawn to his story, and his headstone is amazing. It is a replica of a cannon.
Oh wow.
It's it has a square base, and then
Mhm.
the cannon is standing straight up, and it looks like it's
Okay.
surrounded and held up by cannonballs.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, it's very cool. So it's like an obelisk, but made out of a cannon.
One of your videos I saw had a, I thought it was normal at first, but then you're going and showing the pictures on the headstones, and I was
Mhm.
surprised how many younger people were in there. I mean, most of the times you think of a cemetery, you think just old people. But with
Right.
all your pictures, I was like shocked. There was like even super young children and like
Hmm.
teenagers, and that was very poignant. There, your video about that.
It's difficult sometimes to go and do these. Um, like I did a video about photographs on headstones. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Um, when people will put their own image on. And I came across this one who was a little boy who was about 2 or 3 years old, and it had like engravings of trucks, and people had left little
Mhm.
toys for him. And that one was just really difficult to see because I am a mom, and so I started thinking about my son at that age and just
Mhm.
how hard it would be a parent to lose a child. And yeah, it would be interesting if people did see cemeteries as more than spooky places or creepy places, but as a place that we can go and honor and remember these people and their stories, no matter the age. Because this child who was 2 or 3 years old did have a story. He was part of a family. He had a favorite toy, favorite food. So he had a story in his life and deserves to be remembered.
And that's what I find is so interesting because again, just with your portrayal of that boy, it makes you think about those things too.
Hmm.
Again, we drive by the at the pace of life, we drive by these sacred hollow grounds
Hmm.
where grieving parents, grieving loved ones come and pay honor and remember them. And we just drive by our daily lives worrying about the next thing, the next going to the mall, going to the store, getting our nails done, getting our hair cut, getting a new pair of shoes because they just came out. We drive
Right.
by those cemeteries, and those stories that you so poignantly relay are there,
Hmm.
you know. And we are all in this big spinning rock. We're all
Hmm.
connected in one way or another. As they always say, you're only 6 degrees of separation from everyone in the world.
Right.
You know what I mean? And to think
Yeah.
about those things too is some of those, some of those stories, some of those people that lay there at rest, what if that didn't happen? Where would they be? If that tragic situation of that boy passing, where would he be? And
Right.
also the same point too is, he didn't have much of a life in time, but obviously he was loved and he made a difference to someone, you know,
Right.
and to give recognition and honor to that life is noble. So I just wanted to point that out. Um, is there any like headstone? Is there any place where it's like that that sticks in your mind that just you talk about the canon gravestone and such, but is
Mhm.
there any mausoleum that you find fascinating? Is there any structure that was built in honor of a person? Is there anything that kind of jumps out of your mind like that is amazing architecture of a headstone? Leaving the story behind, but just the construction or the presence of a headstone. Is there any kind of favorite one you might have?
Right. Locally, it's in Forest Lawn at Buffalo. It is for the Blocher family. It is a gazebo-like structure, and
Hmm.
inside, you can't go inside. They have the openings with glass now, so you cannot go inside because there are 4 life-size marble statues in there depicting the deathbed scene of the person.
Hmm.
Person is laying there on his bed. His parents are on either side of him. He was an only child. He was in his late 20s, early 30s when he passed.
Hmm.
There's an angel hanging over his bed.
Wow.
And that one is just absolutely amazing to see. Um, in today's money would be about $3 million to make that.
Wow.
So I love seeing that one. I love taking people to see that one,
Hmm.
architecture-wise. Um, besides or outside the local area, one that really sticks out to me is James Garfield. He's buried in Cleveland, the president,
President. Okay.
President James Garfield. Yes,
Hmm.
he's buried in Lakeview in Cleveland.
Hmm.
It is a massive, probably 4-story structure. It's got like a 2-story building at the bottom. It's got a tower on the top, um, a turret. It's massive, and it's interesting because he was only president for
Not too long.
9 months, I think,
Yeah.
less than a year.
Yeah. 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 Interesting.
Yeah, and so for him to have this massive building always cracks me up compared
Uh-huh.
to, somebody like Kennedy who did, everybody knows and thinks
Arlington
about,
Cemetery. Yes,
and he
I've been at
just has the
Arlington.
little square with his name on it.
Speaking of cemeteries, have you ever been to Arlington Cemetery?
I have many years ago. I would
Mhm.
love to go back now that I'm doing the content creation. Would love to go back and do that.
So
Visit.
maybe some people know, maybe some people don't, but I want to elaborate on this just for a second. And I visited there. It's a long walk. We went to the unknown soldiers' grave again. We watched all the military facade there, so it's very, very, very interesting, very
Hmm.
humbling too. When you look
It is.
across, that cemetery is huge. I mean, very, very, very large with
Mhm.
our family members of our service people and also our service people buried there. But one thing that always made me wonder is why? Why Arlington Cemetery? I met with a curator there, and he explained why. Because again, that was Lee's original home. That's where he
Right.
was. That's where he lived. The government started a cemetery in his wife's garden, and that garden still is there today. And you can see the row of headstones for Civil War soldiers around her tomato plants and such. And it was always to be when he looked out of his window, he was going to see those gravestones. He was going to see the graveyard that was commenced by the war,
Wow.
and that's why it started. It's an interesting piece, but it's very true, and again, very humbling when you look across the hills. When you look across the river, of course, you get up to the hill or you get up to the house. You look across, you see Washington D.C., you see the hustle and bustle, and then you look down at just the rolling hills of fallen soldiers and stuff. It's humbling, you
It
know.
is. I think most military sections in regular cemeteries or the military cemeteries themselves. We have one
Mhm.
here in Western New York, and it's very humbling to see just those pure white headstones all in the precision line.
And that's one thing with the National Cemetery at Gettysburg, which you mentioned about. That's another humbling point because big history buff, but that's where President Lincoln obviously gave the famous Gettysburg Address, and to see the unknown headstones of the bodies, because again, not to be morbid, but during the Civil War there were shallow graves dug very quickly because there was a lot of graves to dig. So when these bodies were exhumed and then moved into more of a hallowed place, they don't have the modern technology of DNA, dog tags, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
So those were the true nameless, faceless, voiceless graves that we'll never
Mhm.
know who they are. We'll never know the girlfriend, the wife, the brother at home in a different state.
Mhm.
That we'll never know what happened or
Right.
where they are.
There is
So,
an interesting story that came out of Western New York,
mhm,
um, related to that. It's Amos Humiston. I believe that's his last name, Humiston.
mhm.
Um, he was found nameless at Gettysburg, but on his body, he had a photograph of his 3 children with him. They ended up publishing this photograph, um, in newspapers all across the country, trying to find
Oh
who
wow.
he was. Um, Eventually, here in Western New York, it was a pastor saw it, and he recognized the children and showed the woman, who was the wife. She was able to identify the kids, and it was because of that photograph that Grant realized the need for a orphanage for the
Hmm.
children for the Civil War. So that was what led to the one in Gettysburg being opened,
Oh wow.
was this gentleman, Amos Humiston,
Hmm.
um, being found with his photograph. And he was from Western New York, and he is buried in the National Cemetery in a marked grave.
The one thing I will say is one place I would always love to visit in a sense of, paying the respects, and Gettysburg was one of them. But actually going off to like Normandy, the
Right.
U.S. graveyard in that area for the
Mhm.
soldiers and stuff, that was definitely one place I always loved to visit. Is there any one specific cemetery that you are just biding time to go visit? You really want to go there?
Would love to go, of course, to like Savannah, Georgia, just because their cemetery is very historic,
Hmm.
very Savannah, very Victorian. They've
Okay.
big
Right.
crypts and mausoleums and the Spanish moss hanging everywhere.
Hmm.
Just looks
Hmm.
amazing. Very similar with New Orleans.
Hmm.
Um, and then of course, there's the standard lots of cemetery people will say, which is Hollywood Forever in
Of
California,
course.
where all
Yes,
the
yes,
celebrities are.
yes. Right.
Um, but on a different note that not many people know about that I would love to go to is, it's called the Mary Cemetery, Merry Cemetery in Romania.
Hmm.
And these are upright markers made out of wood,
Mhm.
handmade, and they are painted bright blue with colorful images on the front of them and stories about the person. And the images that are painted are almost cartoon-like,
Hmm.
and it can be either like a guy leading his cow down the street, if he was a farmer, that kind of stuff. There is one that depicts the how the person died in a car accident, so it's like the wall with the car all squished up and him,
Mhm.
like, laying out the the windshield, um, hand painted on it. It's just
That's a little unusual.
very
Yeah.
unusual, but very unique.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, it is. What drives you to do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's always, getting the stories out there,
Mhm.
but a lot of people don't realize my background. They just see
Okay,
cemetery person,
okay.
but my background is in museums.
Mhm.
I have a degree in art history and a master's in museum studies from Johns Hopkins.
Oh, very nice.
Um,
Congratulations.
yeah, so it, this is also an extension of, what I've done in my career and my
Mhm.
past is the architecture and the beauty of it all. Seeing, the tiny little sculptures in the stones that
Mhm. Mhm.
not a lot of other people would see, and being able to notice this one has roses on it, this one has poppies, and this one has lilies, where other
Right.
people are just like, it has flowers.
Mhm.
Um, being able to realize that each of those are different symbols.
Mhm.
Victorian era, they took symbolism to an extreme. Um, different colors of roses meant different things. Different types of flowers meant mourning or rebirth or love or even hate in some cases. And
You talk about different eras of time and the way people lived. Obviously, we built houses in different types of classical nuances and stuff with different architecture. Do you notice, like, in different areas of the country, um, different cemeteries are produced and made in the context of that area, or do you find, example, the Northeastern are different from California. The ones in Washington State are different from Florida. Now, again, they're obviously, the older the gravestone was, you're going to have a little bit more symbolism than a lot of the stuff that's produced today. I'm assuming. But do you find, different parts of the countries have different types and styles?
they do. It really does. New England and this area, and a lot in the Midwest, upper Midwest especially,
Hmm.
they have a higher number of what's called receiving vaults because they cannot dig the ground during the winter because of it being frozen.
Hmm.
So this receiving vaults are larger, like a mausoleum, where the bodies were brought during the winter and kind of kept there until it thawed in the spring.
Hmm.
Um, places like Louisiana and Florida, they have more above ground crypts because of the water table in the ground being higher. And especially like New Orleans, they have the above ground mausoleums and crypts because of the flooding that they get frequently or used to get
Hmm.
frequently. Um, Arizona is different when you see them out in the desert and then they cover them with stones still in a lot of cases, especially out in the desert. That used to be done way back when to help prevent animals
Hmm.
from getting into it. Um, there's also some cemeteries in Arizona where it is completely desert and dry and rock, except for the cemetery part where they have put down sod. And so it
Right.
looks very funny.
Right,
Um,
right, right.
and also, we are doing burial practices differently. Now, more people are leaning towards cremation.
Mhm,
And so cemeteries are building mausoleums that will hold the cremains and more than one person's cremains in each little section of the mausoleum.
mhm,
So it's different how originally the Vikings would do cremation, and then the Victorians did the big elaborate headstones and mausoleums, and now we're starting to circle back around to the cremations. And there's also green burials, and there's a place at Forest Lawn in Buffalo. I do keep mentioning that. That is the biggest one in Buffalo. It's about
mhm.
260 acres, and I want to say about 300,000 people buried there.
Yeah, that's a large lot.
I-
Wow.
It's it's huge.
Yeah.
So there's examples of everything there, but they have a section that's called the Last Forest in Forest Lawn. It's along a creek. It is very wooded and it has a path through it, and you can scatter cremains there
Mhm,
if that's what you choose to do for your loved ones. So
mhm.
it's interesting to note how burial practices have changed over the years, in addition to how they are culturally as well.
Yes, I
Right.
went through your content. I saw the unique cemeteries, and then I came up to a video which I wasn't prepared for per se, and I saw a pet cemetery. I didn't. I mean, I've heard
Yes.
about them, and I've never seen one, and that was kind of fascinating. Did you want to speak about that a little bit?
Sure. I did visit the pet cemetery a few months ago. That was my first time visiting one, and it was much larger and more elaborate than I expected. I did expect just smaller, little stones. I did not expect large people-like headstones, that you would get for your uncle or your father or, your grandmother, the bigger stones with photographs and etchings and all that. So, but pets are part of our family. They are part of our lives and we do love them. So why should they be treated differently in death than a person?
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, people being honored in death and with those remembrance factors, as you said, pets are they live with some people from childhood all the way to adulthood and
Mhm.
make a huge impact. I mean, again, when you have a bad day at school, you go play with the cat, you go play with the dog, and it does change your outlook of life. So yeah, I mean, it's honoring those that have changed and impacted our lives. Just
Mhm.
a little difficult finding the backstories of that,
Right.
you
Yes.
know.
For
But again,
sure.
it's also very noble too that as a race, as people, we do honor those things in death that we love so much in life.
Mhm.
And, that's a very admirable
Right.
way, and most people don't realize it that they're around, and that's
Right.
that's one thing that's very interesting is how people honor that loved one, that pet in that time frame,
Mhm.
because again, I've seen some
Right.
of those and they're expensive to have those things, and to think
Mhm.
that dog must have meant a lot to that couple, to that person, to that child, for that to be immortalized and also honored in such a deep way, you know.
Right.
So
For
it's
sure.
very honorable.
Now, you mentioned it a little bit, a little while ago. So, what is is it September?
September, yes. So there is an online content creator. He is called the Greedy Peasant. He is a gentleman who pretends that he is a peasant in the year, let's see, it would be 1425. So it's always the year 14, whatever we are. So we're 2025, his 1425. Um, but he started what is called September. It is CEME Timber, um, instead of September. And
Uh,
it's a way to share cemetery information and to honor the cemeteries themselves. Last year and this year, his theme was they're called Zinkies, which are headstones that were from the Victorian era, late 1880s to right before World War One, and they are made out of zinc. Um, yeah, you could order them through a catalog, like Sears would sell these through your
right.
catalog. Um, they're easy to pick out in cemeteries when you are looking for them because they are a blue-gray color. They're all the standard color. It's fun to go and knock on them because they're hollow, and so you
Uh-huh.
can hear the metal noise.
Uh-huh.
And also, one story about Zinkies is that they have panels on them where they would put the names and the dates and they would screw in. But during Prohibition, the bootleggers would go and unscrew them and store the liquor inside as like a drop spot where others would come later and pick it up
Wow.
at
Oh,
night.
wow.
All right.
I know.
Yeah, that's,
That's a little more a little interesting, but
I,
you
right.
learn something
yeah.
new every day.
Yeah, your content
That's
opens up a whole
crazy.
different world. I've never knew there were different meanings for things on headstones,
Hmm.
and I
Mhm.
never knew there was the zinc headstone. That's actually really fascinating.
Yeah. I love just all the different aspects about it. Behind me here, I have a huge pile of books about everything from like death and burial practices to history of certain cemeteries and cemeteries around the world and the different symbolism found in it.
Uh,
There's an author that I love. Her name is Tui. TUI Snyder. She just wrote one, Around the World in 80 Graves, where she goes and visits just different cemeteries, shares the cultures, shares her trips, what they were like, as well as the history and the symbolism and meaning behind each one.
Definitely have to check that book out and see what I can learn from that.
Yeah.
So, as people are more interested in what you're doing in your content, but how do they find out more about you? Where are you at on the interweb?
Sure. So I am mostly on TikTok. That is where you'll find most of my videos, or all of my videos, actually, as well as when I go live, it would be on TikTok. I'm planning to go live more in the spring. As of right now, I do not have a schedule set up for that.
Okay.
Also, they can find me on Instagram and YouTube. It's the same Western NY Cemeteries on all three platforms.
Okay. Good. Good.
Um, Most of the content is the same on each one, so it's whatever people like. Um, Also, if they have any questions, I do have Western NY Cemeteries at gmail.com that people can reach out that way.
Perfect. Perfect. Well, Katrina,
No, that's
you
great.
have definitely brought some new information to my eyes, and I truly
Good.
appreciate for that. Your passion, your drive, again, to take something that no one thinks about in their daily lives, but puts words, puts names, puts stories behind the headstone, and that is so admirable to keep these people alive in a sense through your work. It's very notable, very honorable, and it's interesting. It really is. I will not I will not drive by another gravestone and not think about those items, not think about those things, not really truly think about him. Again, it's admirable for what you're doing. It really is. I'm amazed that I haven't even thought of things like this before, but it's true, and you've really opened up a
Right.
lot in my
Well,
eyes,
that's good.
in my mind. So that you get the purpose is
That's my
being served.
goal.
Exactly. So you have definitely raised and piqued my interest for sure. So, and I
Good.
do appreciate and thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. If you enjoyed this conversation, don't forget to follow our podcast and share it with your friends. Got thoughts or questions? Go to behindthelive.com where you can join our Discord or submit questions for other creators. We'd love to hear from you. Also, connect with us on social media, search Behind the Live or our parent company, Elite Vault Agency. Until next time, keep creating, exploring, and we'll see you behind the live.